need. Our ongoing discussion today is February 7th, and we're talking about chapters 9 and 10. Next week will be our final session um, of this book with chapters 11 and 12. And I just want to remind everyone, or let people who haven't been on our discussion before, that we had a couple of folks donate money to buy books so that we can offer them to folks who didn't have one or wasn't able to get one. So we have a box of books in the church office still. And books do no good if they're left in a box under a desk. And so if you need a book, if you want a book, if you want a book to read later on, please let us know, okay? And if you're not able to get the book, we have a huge handful of people that are willing to bring them out, or we could mail them to people. So please let us know if you would like a book, okay? We are continuing with our invitation to brave space, like was noted before. We won't always be perfect, but we try to enter the space with love and understanding and truth, right? So check in for holy habits. So this week, the holy habit was to schedule, or step 4 was to schedule time to work on these habits. And I wanted to check in and see how this is going for y'all. I know that maybe not everybody has done said habits, and that's okay. But those of you that have, how is it going? Have you practiced your new habit? What have you noticed?
So Michelle, I'll stand up and talk. For me, and in trying to lead some of this conversation, at first it was just really overwhelming for me. I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to create holy habits? And what does that mean? And how do I write my vows and such? And I don't have my book, unfortunately, right in front of me, but I love in this fourth section how Bishop Curry talks about, when I was a priest, I was able to carve out a day in my life, and I would learn more, or pray more, or, and determine what he could do more of in a single day in the week. But now that he's the bishop, he finds that his time is so much more limited. And I know that of our congregation, so many people are busy. And he says, what I do is I travel a lot. And when I travel, I reserve my time in my seat to read. And I thought that was beautiful, trying to determine something that you can do with maybe a single space in time during your week. And that helped make it more tangible to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Daphne. Who else would like to share?
I off and on for many years I've journaled, but I went back to making sure that that was something I did. And this morning I was looking out at the beautiful snow out the window, and I actually wrote a poem about it, which I used to do all the time. And it just improves your writing skills because you have to think in a different way. But every day, one of my things was to recognize nature and to thank God for the beauty of the earth and to try to take that into my soul. So I have a little greeting that I give to the trees outside my window every morning. And like one day I skipped all of that and I had a horrible day, just horrible, and I've cut out reading some news and stuff. I'm trying to draw myself into a more spiritual practice. And when I do, it's so much better.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. What a great way to highlight how it's impacted other parts of your day.
I wanted to say I got drawn into a daily habit that I wasn't Yeah, I just didn't know if I was going to continue it, but John and also Kim, but John leads the evening prayer, and that's 15 minutes. And I know some of you here today also join. And like Daphne was like, because I'm not always home. We try to get out. I have my husband who's not Episcopalian, so I have to make time for him. But we like to get out during the day and hike. So I've tried to rearrange, our day and dinner, and it's become just very comforting. So I want to thank both of them and everyone who participates in that. And I thought it was going to end on January 31st. I'm like, whoa, but I know it's going to continue. So I think I always can't be there 100%, but I think I will continue to do that. It's just brought a lot of just quiet time and reflecting with other people as well. So we'll see.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share?
I will.
Thanks.
I feel like this book and these recommendations have really helped me enter the next phase post-retirement of being me. And so, and to have it be ushered in with, the way that he speaks and writes, so straight up and close to the bone. It's really helpful to me, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this study. So. And I think the daily habits are the little things, that's what rolls me back to gratitude, and then, looking for ways to be of service to those who, don't have heat and food and, the things that water. Like,
Exactly.
Michelle, I
Okay.
stumbled on a habit that really started this summer in a book that we were reading as a group of EFM summer people. And it had to do with critical thinking and being critical. And the suggestion from both the Dalai Lama and Bishop Tutu was that we put space between stimulus and response. And that has given me an entirely different approach to what I do when I watch the news. And I just wanted to say that some of these habits that you think, well, I'll try this, are going to grab you and really, really change the way you interact. And I'm sure my husband would agree that he's been spared a lot of critical thinking because, again, there's so much that we have that comes at us every day. And it also increases your listening skills. So I'm really tickled that we had a chance to do that, and I've carried it over into this study that we're doing as part of Christian formation.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So as a little shout out, John mentioned earlier that during Lent, we're going to be looking at some meditations, and it's going to start with rest. And so that space between what you're doing and what you're hearing is really important. And so I think I just said that wrong, but what you said is really important, and rest is going to be part of that. I hear somebody whispering. Is it? Okay, as long as you're not trying to whisper to me, because yeah, I need more volume than that.
So
Also,
Michelle, real quick, I'm sorry. I know you have got a full lineup of what you want to talk. I just want to say to everybody that one of the greatest gifts a person gave me once, and it's following along what Julie said, that a habit takes us a long, long time to form, a bad habit or a good habit. And so as we create these new habits or trying to create these new habits, he really encouraged me to stick with it. And he said, slowly, you're going to see this subtle shift. And then all of a sudden, one day, maybe 30 days down the road, 60 days around the road, it has become a habit. So don't give up, folks.
thank you, Marilyn. And you know what? Your contribution is really important. Everyone's is. And so please don't apologize for wanting to say a thing or thinking that saying a thing is going to be helpful. Okay? Everything is helpful and you are important. So thank you, Marilyn. I'm going to move on in the interest of time. Maybe I'll move on. There we go. Okay, so our focus today are the two chapters, chapter 9, which is the real e pluribus unum. And the question with this chapter is, do I have to love even my enemy? So we're going to explore that a little bit more. And then chapter 10, the great relationship revival. And the question there is, how can love overcome what divides us and moves us forward together? Daphne, could I have you read this? And before you do, if you're comfortable doing so, could everyone close their eyes and just listen to what Daphne's saying about the summary of chapter 9? So Daphne, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Michelle. In chapter 9, Bishop Curry discusses the challenge that he believes to be greatest for the church, the nation, and the world. How to walk together in Christian love, even when we are working through significant differences. He shares his passion for moving forward in hope and love together, rejoicing in our shared concern for a better world, and leaving behind the concept that will always work against the best interests of all. And leaving behind the contempt that will always work against the best interests of all. By sharing the personal stories of his experience of the 2015 meeting of Anglican Communion Primates, the presiding bishop gives the reader a glimpse into how agreeing to love is the greatest agreement.
I love the summary in that it really captures some of the things that we've been talking about already. Walking together in Christian love, even when we might not agree with each other. Leaving behind the contempt, and we're going to talk about contempt a little bit more later on. And agreeing to love is the greatest agreement. And sometimes a really difficult agreement. So a few of the highlights of this chapter includes the covenant of respectful conversation used in the gatherings. And it challenged the people there to listen to each other, pray for each other, love each other, and discern together to hear what the Spirit might be saying to the church. This is on page 192 and 193 if you want to look at it a little bit more. And as I was looking at this, I was thinking, if this was our holy habit, wouldn't this be so amazingly powerful? Because I had trouble with holy habits, I'll be honest. I was thinking of it as like New Year's resolutions and just resisting so hard against it. Like, I don't want to do a holy habit because it's just going to not blah, 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 blah. Right. And let's see how closed caption does that. But thinking about this, if this was the holy habit of every person in our church, listen to each other, pray for each other, love each other, and discern together to hear what the Spirit might be saying to the church, that would be powerful. Another thing Bishop Curry said in this chapter is the more personal we become with each other, the more people's animosity seemed to fall away. We couldn't demonize each other when we knew each other so well, right? When you get to know someone, you have a whole different perspective about who they are, what they've been through, and the history behind what they're saying or how they're acting. So when we get to know each other, then real love can happen. And then finally, about contempt, we need to leave behind contempt. Contempt is the belief that the person who disagrees with you isn't just wrong, but worthless. It's a killer when it comes to marriages, they've found, and no better for any other human relationship. Try making meaningful progress when contempt controls the discussion. It's like trying to grow plants in radioactive soil, right? It's just not going to work. So contempt, we need to leave behind contempt. The scripture for this chapter, Kim, would you be willing to read this, please?
I'd be honored. Ephesians 5, verse 2. Live in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God.
Live in love as Christ loved us. So the question for this chapter is, do I have to love even my enemy? And the answer is yes. Live in love. When I was looking for this verse online, some of you may know that you can go to these websites that have all the different translations. And it was really interesting to do that with this verse because God is telling us, live in love. Another version, walk in love. Another one, be full of love for others. Let love be your guide. Do I have to love even my enemy? And what did we hear? Contempt is the belief that the person who disagrees with you isn't just wrong, but worthless. Pretty much the opposite of love. Do you have to love even my enemy? Yes. Live in love. So in this chapter, Bishop Curry insists that love allows us to remain in relationships, even when there are strong disagreements. Do you believe this to be true? So I want to try breakout rooms at this point. So I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to create some breakout rooms, hopefully with about 6 people in each room. Okay, and we're going to assign you automatically, so at random. So if you don't want to be in a breakout room, that's okay. As soon as you're put into it, just leave the room and you can hang out in this space right here. And then you're just going to talk about, just for a few minutes, examples of where this is shown to be true, that love allows us to remain in relationships even when there's strong disagreements. And we're going to do this for about 5 minutes, and then y'all will come back to the main room. All right. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm going to do this, and you're going to automatically just be taken to your room. And hi, Kim. You're on mute.
Mute. There I go. I'm looking to see which group has the fewest number of people in before I jump in. Somehow co-hosts don't automatically get assigned.
You can jump in, or you can just hang out here if you want.
Okie dokie. I think I'll go in 6. There's only 3 there, so I'll see you back in a minute.
Sounds good. Hi, Jean. How are you?
I'm good.
Wonderful. I'm so glad that you come each week. I love seeing you and hearing what you have to say.
I'm a bit late.
Oh, okay. Did you just join?
Yeah.
Oh, well then, I'm sorry. I put everyone into breakout rooms, groups,
Oh.
so that they can talk about this slide that's currently up about love and how it allows us to remain in relationships even when there are disagreements. In this chapter, Bishop Curry is at the Anglican, I can't remember what it's called. He's at that really important meeting.
Yeah.
of the church.
Yeah, the primates.
Yes, the primates, exactly.
I always think that means that's another name for monkeys.
I know. I thought it was funny and interesting.
Yeah, that's a useless. Would have led to a better outcome.
Would you
No.
like to go into a room with some other folks and hear what they have to say?
Doesn't matter. Whatever is easiest for you is fine with me. I
Computer.
have read the chapter, but I'm not apparently up on examples.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and put you into a room, and
Sure.
actually I'm not. There's 1 more minute. And then all the rooms will close. And so I'm going to go ahead and just chat with you.
Okay.
And everyone else will automatically be brought back to
Okay.
the main group after. Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Thanks.
I believe that his kind of teaching, though, would be valuable while we have political disagreements among people we care about. And
Yeah.
is clearly that there are people who feel strongly about a different political view than mine. And I cannot just write them off as being, my habit would be to just write them off as illiterate and not worth arguing with. But I can't do that.
Yeah. And we, we've talked about that contempt is like the barrier. It's the stopping point, right, of anything further happening. When there's contempt, it's just
he's
healed
guiding
off
the
your
wheelchair really nicely.
And so I want to welcome y'all back to the main group and ask you to share what you shared in your breakout room.
Well, I'll share from ours. We were group one. Person was talking about that sometimes a strategy can be to go sort of superficial. It's like when you just can't access where you want to be, at least if you can maintain something until, I guess, an opening presents itself. And then the other thing was how on Facebook, like if you rediscover people that you really loved and spent your teenage years with, like you went to high school with, and you haven't, and you've found them again at, the age that you are, it's like you can tell that you would have had a lot of disagreements along the way, and you may not have ever remained friends, but you just sort of jumped right over that and you got back to the love, and how that can really sort of teach us something. So
Absolutely.
In our group, we talked about the election and how compartmentalizing the differences enabled us to continue to love and be in relationship with those who had a different political perspective.
Yeah, that one's still tough. That wound is still raw for a lot of folks. And so figuring out how to let go of the contempt and go forward with love is something that a lot of folks are being challenged with.
I think in our group, one of the observations we made is that this is really kind of taking the long view, right? So one of our participants talked about a difficult family relationship as well, on a lot of politics and philosophy and just kind of life, life values, and how kind of consistently going back at that with love is yielding results, but slowly, and that it's really a long view. It's really taking that that different view than most of us want to take, where we sort of want to, I'll speak for myself, fix everything and have it be okay, and like tomorrow it's all resolved and it's good, right? It's like, that's not this. This is a patient going back at it consistently, kind of behavior and practice. So I think that was an aha for me, listening to the person speaking in our breakout.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things that struck me is overcoming society norms, what my neighbors might think of me, what everyone else in the world might think of me if I love this person just the way they are. Got a lot of work to do in that realm.
Well, my group, I was hoping someone else would speak, but my group, we started with how do you love the Proud Boys, and then went straight to how do you, that someone had a daughter who voted in a way that brought that person pain. And I think we kept coming back to this notion that love, if we can put love there in the center, then it's going to show us a way forward. And I really loved what the person said about their daughter. They said, how can you not love your daughter? And then if we can take that on to our early chapter that talked about loving our neighbors as ourselves, then I suppose the Proud Boys are our neighbors. So we got to find a way.
I think one of the key things too is the more you get to know people, the more you find there are commonalities, and sometimes we're both afraid of the same things. We express it differently. We both want the same things, but we think there's different ways or methods. And I think part of the overcoming of this is for whether try to create proximate in your life where you are meeting, being with people who aren't like you, and creating that. You learn from that, and that it's very easy to say that, but obviously the harder is to do it. But I think that's the challenge today that churches and institutions have, of how can we create proximate opportunities where once you know somebody, it's really tough to maybe turn your back on them after that.
Carol, that's so beautifully said. And that just wraps up everything that we've been talking about, where Bishop Curry said the more personal we became with each other, the more people's animosity fell away. When we look at people as a group, in contrast to looking at people as individuals, which was last week, right? I and thou. And when it's them, the Proud Boys, I can easily go to contempt for them and what they stand for. But if I looked at people individually and learned their stories, I might have a different perspective. We talk about that in social justice too, right? The seeing white groups, it's all about hearing stories about individuals that give us a different perspective instead of looking at maybe a group of like, oh, these are people that I don't want to be in contact with, as opposed to, wow, they really got done wrong by the government or the police department or whatever. And having a whole different feeling for folks. And so, yeah, getting to know people, being in proximity with people, whether it's on social media, because right now that's kind of all we got, or whether it's actually in person when we're allowed to do that once again. And that's part of what Beloved is about too, right? Learning about folks and their situation and finding out like what led them to be a person that is houseless, right? Person without a home, person without a house. Home is a whole different word, but I have a friend who often rails about the homeless population in her town and how they mess everything up and they are drug dealers and they, just leave trash all over the place. And I feel like she needs a Beloved community to learn about they and learn that they are not much different from her, except that they don't currently have a house to live in. So thank you, Carol, for wrapping that up so beautifully. We're going to go on to chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the Great Relationship Revival. And the question for chapter 10 is, how can love overcome what divides us and moves us forward together? Kim.
There it is. Sorry about that. Couldn't find my mute button. In Galatians chapter 3, there is no longer Jew or Greek. There's no longer slave or free. There's no longer male and female, for all of you are one in Jesus Christ.
Beautiful. And talk about chapter 9, E pluribus unum, right? From many, one. You are all one in Jesus Christ. Yana, did you have something?
No, I just put into the chat a song that kept coming to my head during chapter 9. Others can click on that, and if they enjoy it, that's all.
Excellent. Can you say what the song is? for those of us who can't go.
Sure. Sorry. The song is called Scott and Jamie, and it's by Fred Small. And it's a story of a couple that attempted to adopt children, but were not allowed to. And the chorus goes, "Love is love, no matter who, no matter where." And it just kept coming to my head.
Love is love. Beautiful. Thank you, Yana. So once again, I'm going to ask you all, if you're comfortable doing so, to close your eyes and listen to Daphne. Hi, Daphne, you're up. Listen to Daphne read the summary of chapter 10.
In chapter 10, Bishop Curry continues to express his concern over divisions in our nation and the world, reminding the reader of the particular pain suffered by all who feel unheard, ignored, or under siege. He reiterates his confidence in the power of love to overcome such pain and division, and he speaks to the healing power of the sharing of our stories. Telling his own story and that of the Reverend Canon Stephanie Spellers of reconciliation and activism work with the Sioux at Standing Rock, the presiding bishop emphasizes the importance of deep listening and truth-telling.
Thank you, Daphne. In this chapter, Bishop Curry emphasizes that truth comes before reconciliation. And he admits that telling our true stories and listening to those of others must take us outside of our comfort zones. One of the most impactful things that somebody told me when I was doing a project that I was very uncomfortable with, totally outside my comfort zone, was that is where the magic happens. That is where learning happens. That is where growth happens. That is where love happens. But telling the truth is not always easy, right? Telling stories and listening to those of others is not always easy. What makes it difficult? What are things that make it difficult to talk about and to listen to the truth?
Well, I think when we may be invested in another perspective, that may make it difficult to talk about and listen to the truth.
Claire, can you say that again? When we are what? Sorry.
I think when we're invested in another perspective, that may make it difficult to talk about and to listen to the truth.
Yes, thank you. When we're invested in a different perspective, hearing the truth can be difficult. Go ahead.
I was going to say, others who hold differing views from myself feel they're just as true as I am. We have to remember that folks in taking it out, even out of the political realm, which is so prevalent, but in any realm, they really think they're true. They're willing to make those sacrifices. So, and then we think, or I think rather, I know the truth. And it's really challenging, and somewhere there's a middle, but I think one of the things that holds us back sometimes is shame and guilt. And also being able to face it in our own self before we can air it out, so to speak. And that's what some of the things that I wrestle with a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. One of the organizations I'm so blessed to work with does a lot of work with, domestic and intimate partner violence. And thinking about this question that Michelle posed for us, I think about how difficult it is for those women mostly women and children, to tell their truth, because they are so frightened of the vulnerability in that and of the potential of being rejected or judged or not believed. And I think, in many circumstances, not just those, but that's the one that came to mind for me. It's very difficult for the truth when you think it's going to be rejected and turned around on you as a weapon, frankly.
Absolutely. And so the listening is as important as the talking about, right? We have to be willing to listen to the truth. On page 222, Bishop Curry states that apart from residential segregation, media segregates us as well. Simply put, the people who watch Sean Hannity tonight are not going to turn to MSNBC to watch Rachel Maddow. Cable news and the rise of social media have made it possible to consume news 24/7 and never hear an opinion different from your own. Never hear an opinion different from your own. So I challenge y'all to get out of your comfort zone and listen to some news that you are not wanting to listen to. Listen.
Oh, Lord.
I know. And this might be
parallel universe,
right? Okay, I did it for 3 minutes. That's all I can handle. Okay, I did it for 4 minutes today. That's, take care of yourself, of course, but try to listen to different viewpoints. Try to be in proximity to people who have different viewpoints to you, because if you're not being challenged, if you're not stepping outside of your comfort zone, you're just hearing the same thing over and over, right? And while it's lovely to get our beliefs reinforced and to have people say, yeah, right on, that's great, your truth is correct, it's really important to listen to the truth of other folks so that love can happen.
Miranda, I think is, yep.
Yeah,
Miranda.
so something that I've been really wrestling with, and kind of, I again hopped into this late because I was with the EYC over time, which I was very thankful for, but I keep wrestling with the desire, like our desire as white, liberal, maybe mostly democratically minded people in the Zoom to move towards the other that is very far to the right. And I was thinking about that and just like thinking about, yes, we're absolutely called to listen to and hear the truth of and kind of join with folks who are different with us. But then I was realizing that for me, I wonder if in a lot of ways as white people, we're not that different from the folks who are deeply invested in white supremacy, because we as white people, I as a white person, as much as I learn about and continue to try and divest from white supremacy, I am still invested in white supremacy. And like Claire said, like it's really hard to hear the truth when you're invested in it. And so like, I feel like I'm already kind of like in proximity to folks who are really invested in that viewpoint. And I know a lot of us have family members, and so we are proximate by being in like by biological relationship, by deep friendships that go back to childhood. There's already that proximity. And so I think it's really the trend, the pattern that I've been noticing, particularly in this election cycle, of desire for proximity and unity with folks whose truth is that some people do not have value, whose truth is that some lives do not have value. Like that feels like a really hard thing to, like that doesn't seem like a truth to center. It troubles me that that's the truth that we always talk about centering and being proximate and kind of coming together with, versus what about the truth of like people who are more radical leftists than me, like people who are saying like, let's abolish all prisons, not just the death penalty, not just life sentences. Let's go that direction. Like there's this tendency, I feel like, for like a lot of the people in Asheville, a lot of the people in my communities to go in one direction and not the other. And for me, the group that naturally we're less proximate to, naturally we hear less from, are like Black women and queer women, like all like the people who are most marginalized and most oppressed and have views maybe miles left of where we are. And so yeah, that's just been really troubling me. And that was something that kind of I was realizing hearing folks talking. So thank you.
And I would, oh shoot, am I on? Yeah, I would love to say that I was trying to formulate something like 1/10 as eloquent as that. But that's kind of where I am also, that we, and again, I'll try to share this Diana Butler Bass talk, because she talks about the problem with the very, very, very far right is that they have, in order to function, they really have had to create an alternate reality, and that it is a very white supremacist reality. And that, and again, I'm not saying we don't love those people, but I'm kind of with Miranda, the stories. I mean, I think we hear those stories. We're getting a lot of that even in press that I read. I mean, I'm reading articles about the conspiracy theories. I'm pretty exposed to that viewpoint, but I'm like Miranda, what I'm hungry to hear is to be in a gathering like Stephanie Sellers was and hear a Native American's explanation about why water is so important to them, and get, like you say, proximate to people whose stories will in some way amplify my ability to understand what oppression looks like. This morning, Bill and I were talking about the fact that we're in a warm house. And then I went back and reflected about the fact that from the very beginning, my incredible advantage of being white has enabled me to always be in a home. We were talking about housing insecurity and how it's worse than it's ever been. So I think we've got to go both ways. We've got to be aware that we've got to touch base with all of those things. But I'm with you, Miranda. My energy is really being directed towards trying to hear the stories of those whose life experience is truly, different from mine.
I think we need to find out, what are people afraid of and why they do what they do, because most of us always struggle to keep what we have. We suffer more a loss. There was a thing once where they said, if I call you at 3 a.m. to tell you you want a set of tires, you're gonna, if I call you at 3 a.m. and tell you your car is the tires are being stripped. So we're always more fear of that loss. So what are we losing? And reckoning with that, because maybe at the very, very bottom of that is where we can at least agree on some of that. So what are they afraid of? What are they motivating toward? I mean, off the top of my head, I would say, well, maybe a lot of the Proud Boys did not have exactly a parental love. So who knows? You can't make a generalization. I understand that. But I guess I'm just saying, that's what I'm kind of obsessing with lately. What are you afraid of, and why do you do what you do? A root cause, because you'll never make it on one fact for another to support that. I don't think that's where the argument or where the community would end up at, would realize.
Yeah.
I think love calls us to deep listening, getting back to Michelle's earlier point, and to finding areas where we are in agreement, like Bishop Curry talking about his family to the primates in England, and that bringing them together and listening to mutual stories, and that would help us move forward in love together.
Definitely. And I thank you all for your comments. I want
Michelle, just John had a comment, and then there's a comment in the chat reminding us of the scripture, the passage that starts with hate evil and love your neighbor, and how do we hold that nuance. But I think John, you were trying to make a comment.
It was it was while Miranda was talking, I was it's still an unformulated thought, so caveat on that, but I was really glad for what she had to say because there was something in me that was resisting, yes, we should get outside of our bubbles, but I love the way that Miranda said, okay, what exactly is the bubble that we're in? I don't want to listen to Fox News any more than I want to drink milk that has gone bad in my refrigerator. I want to go to where nutrition is, but just to build on what Miranda was saying, I think for me, what resonates better for me anyway, maybe it's just because I'm not that good of a person. I would rather go listen to the hungry and the poor and then protect the hungry and the poor from the people who are trying to make their lives worse. That's where I want to put my energy. I don't want to put my energy into understanding. I just don't want, I want to put that, so I just try to, again, it's undeveloped thought. I think where I want to put my energy is in listening, not so much to the Proud Boys, but to the chat out here and to others who are down and out. And then how do we change laws? How do we keep the people who made the law so bad out of power? And how do we get more people in power who want to change laws for the betterment of the poor and the marginalized? That's where I find that I want to put my energy. So those thoughts were beginning to roll as Miranda was helping to reshape that, getting out of the bubble sentiment. So thank you for that, Miranda.
I want to thank you also, Miranda, because I was getting off onto a more dramatic but erroneous path of listening to those who are unlike you. But what I really, really believe is similar to what John just said, of listening to folks who are having trouble, listening to folks who are not as privileged as you, finding out more about Standing Rock, finding out more about these things that, with the water, why is it so important, and things like that. So I want to clarify that I'm not asking anybody to listen to Sean Hannity or find out more about the Proud Boys. But I do want to encourage y'all to step outside of your comfort zone and find out about something that you don't know about that does make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah, there's a difference between listening to someone else's truth and someone else's delusion.
Yes, thank you, Martha. Absolutely. We want to listen to other people's truth, right? Listen to their truth.
But that does lead us back to this circle cycle of we're all in a different truth silo.
Exactly.
And to understand my friend who believes all that and is still grieving at the election results, I need to understand her version of true, because my version of true is only that in her eyes.
Yeah.
So claiming I have some monopoly on the truth is not a step in a good direction either. So anyway,
We can listen to other people's truth and still have our own truth. Like, they can have their truth and we can have our truth, but the importance of listening is the key, right? The importance of not having contempt for a person who has a different opinion is the key.
What I was trying to say is, if I listen to someone telling me about how whatever it was caused by a laser beam from the Rothschild family, that's not going to challenge my vision of truth. What I'm talking about is to listen to people that can challenge your perception of truth.
Right. Absolutely.
Michelle, Marilyn put a great reminder in the chat for us. You know, we all talk about getting proximate and needing to be out of our bubbles, and then sometimes we let opportunities just float past us. Well, we've got, as a congregation, a great opportunity the next 3 consecutive Sundays. We get for free anti-racism training from one of the grantees of All Souls and of the Outreach Committee. So check out the epistle for that, because that's I think it's 3 Sundays in a row for 2 hours. We're going to be schooled by Katie and Nicole from Therapists Like Me, which is one of the organizations that All Souls has granted to, that I very interestingly, as a condition of accepting the grant money, wants us to go through this training. So talk about a really wonderful, I mean, I just love that behavior so much and love that norm of theirs. So Marilyn, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I imagine that for those of you who decide to join, there will be some challenges to what your truth is, and there will be some opportunities for deep listening. Yeah. So I really quickly have just a few more things that I want to, and I know that we're past time. So those of you that need to go, please do what you need to do. But I wanted to follow up by talking about Bishop Curry's time with the Sioux and the stories, right? The stories were so important. And this really struck me because when we have presented the Seeing White series, we talked about this and we listened to a video from Kelly Brown Douglas, well, that she was part of. And from that, we took these points of to root us in this work. And one of the most important things that we took was the repentant truth telling and the restorative letting go. And so repentant truth telling is not telling the truth so that you can be relieved of all your guilt. It's telling the truth and choosing to do something different. Okay? Telling the truth and choosing to do something different. We have a lot of white supremacist ideas and laws, and just saying that, acknowledging it is important. But if we just continue to have those laws so that we continue to benefit from that, that's not repentant truth telling. We need to do something different, change the laws, change the ways that we benefit from white supremacy. And then restorative letting go. This is different than just get over it and move on. This is letting go of our whiteness. We can be restored to what it means to be a child of God, right? So understanding the history and resolving to do something different about it, and then letting go of our whiteness so that things can change. Restorative letting go. And then I want to end with just an acknowledgement that storytelling was so important in this book. It's been so important from the very first story about his grandmother, right? Doing, making something from nothing. So storytelling forges connections among people and between people and ideas. Stories convey the culture, history, and values that unite people. When it comes to our countries, our communities, and our families, we understand intuitively that stories we hold in common are an important part of the ties that bind. I loved hearing the stories of Bishop Curry at Standing Rock, of his time with the primates, of his grandmother. They're just such a fantastic way to convey culture, history, and values. And so a few of the quotes are from Bishop Curry. Stories are the song of the soul, sung in the language of life. I love that. And actually, Kathy pointed that out to me. Thank you, Kathy. And whenever someone tells you their story, you are standing on holy ground. So when we share stories, we're sharing part of ourselves, and that's really powerful. So very quickly, next week will be the last week of this and the final chapters of Love is the Way. We have several copies of the book. So if you want one, if you need one, if you need us to bring you one, please let us know. Next week is chapters 11 and 12. And renew your rule of life for sustainability and make refinements. So we're going to talk about the holy habits a bit more.
And I would just encourage you all, since we do have extra books, if there's somebody in your life that you're really struggling with that you feel would benefit from this book and it would feel like a loving thing to give them a book, also know you can access the book for that use as well, not just.
Excellent. Thank you, Kathy. So as a way to close, bringing to mind the conversation we've had during the past hour and 10 minutes, and giving thanks for the presence of the Holy Spirit and the gift of stories and love, please share one word that you will take with you into the week.
Story.
Story.
Kindness.
Listening.
Reconciliation.
Listening.
Truth.
Can I ask everyone to just take a deep breath? And let it out. John, can you close us in prayer?
Did you say me?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for the beauty of this day. We thank you for the beauty of this faith community. Help us to be inspired. Help us to have our hearts melted, our minds opened, and help us to move out into the world as changed people moving in your direction and into more loving service to the people you put into our paths this week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much. So a few of us will stay on for those of you who would like to continue the chat or just, stay on too. And those of you that need to go, thank you so much for joining us.
Michelle, bravo. That was
Yep.
so great.
That was lovely.
And your PowerPoints were so good. I'm in awe of PowerPoints because I don't even know where. I thought they just sort of happened. I don't know how they work.
It's my hidden superpower. I just I take a PowerPoint and I just make it pretty. I throw color at it and whatever.
Well, I was going to say the color. I really noticed the color. That was neat, the way it. And Tahani, I don't know if it was you or Abby, but I noticed in the epistle, the announcement for the anti-racism training was in pink. And I turned to Bill and I went, yeah, they really did highlight this.
That was definitely all Abby. I'm just going to.
I was so grateful. Wow.
I wanted to say that my word that I didn't say during the end, but because it would have just been confusing for everyone except the people in our group, was bird watching.